It's The World This Week, 7 days, 4 Paris-based correspondents, 1 hour. The World This Week in partnership with the Daily Beast. Foreign editor Christopher Dickey is with us. How are you, sir?
Glad to be here.
Glad to welcome you.
I always say the same thing, but it's true. It's true. I am glad to be here.
Okay, well, we're always glad. We're glad as well. True. And we're also glad to welcome Nupur Tiwari, founder of the feminist news feed service Smashboard.
Hi again. Also, how have you been?
I've been well. It's been a while. We're going to catch up now.
Okay.
There's been a lot going on this week. Angela Diffley, reporter at Radio France International, our sister station.
Hi.
And with us as well is Georg Blum, Paris correspondent for German newspaper Die Zeit, author of The Undesirable Friend, which is all about...
Well, our difficult love relationship between France and Germany.
Okay. Who's the undesirable one? Is it France or Germany?
Undesirable is Macron in Germany right now.
Okay. The World This Week on Facebook and Twitter. Hashtag World This Week. They think it's all over. It is now for Theresa May. All it took was a whiff of compromise for the Conservative Party to rebel and force out the UK's Prime Minister of nearly 3 years.
Our politics may be under strain, but there is so much that is good about this country. So much to be proud of. So much to be optimistic about. I will shortly leave the job that it has been the honour of my life to hold. The second female Prime Minister, but certainly not the last. I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
You know, Angela Diffley, all those times in the House of Commons where it's been so brutal over most of the past 3 years, and there she was plowing ahead, and there we saw emotion.
Yeah, and somebody tweeted and said, oh, emotion, if only, an MP, I forget who, said, if only we had seen some of that emotion earlier, then things would have been so different. Perhaps that's the person she is. I'm not sure people want their Prime Minister emoting all the time. She's the person she is. She had astonishing resilience, steadfastness. She was handed a deal which was, in my view, pretty impossible, but she certainly made mistakes. But I think you need to be made of stone not to be moved when you saw that speech.
So something we were debating amongst ourselves in the newsroom earlier was we had the sense yesterday, up until yesterday, that she still wanted to stick around and try to push that fourth attempt to get her Brexit bill through Parliament.
Well, I suppose she came in to do that, and it's astonishing that after nearly 3 years, that has eclipsed everything else in her prime ministership. It was the single issue which dominated everything, and she has failed. It's understandable, I suppose, that she wanted to try and achieve something before going, but it's unachievable under her leadership.
All right, Angela Diffley talked about mistakes. Where to start?
Well, firstly, I think Theresa May was brought in to do a job which was impossible. And this will perhaps clear the way for other people to now do the job which might be a little easier.
Might be easier
because, you know, she has tried, to have a withdrawal agreement, which has these compromises that people would not accept. So she's been booted out. And this, David Cameron just did the referendum and he scooted, right? And then Theresa May comes in to do something really difficult, and she's constantly critiqued. And of course, this comment that was made about her not showing enough emotion. I mean, like women, when they show emotion, that's not good enough. Or
it was a female
weakness.
MP.
And when they don't show emotion, they are, there was somebody who said about her that she's a bloody difficult woman. And also in Parliament, somebody, did this... did this to her.
Yeah,
and,
the backbench conservative Macron.
She's a woman politician. So apart from the fact that she's conservative, and for that I have really no love lost for her, but she had a very difficult job to do. And after all, she belongs to what she herself knows is often referred to as the nasty party. So, I mean, obviously things were very difficult for her. But I think that whoever follows up now would probably have a slightly easier job because, she's already taken the brunt of all of it. And it's been going on for really long now.
It's over for Theresa May, but not for Brexit. And if you roll back the clock to June of 2016, and those were the images the day after the vote, at the time we'd had so much vitriol on the campaign, you'd even had an MP murdered. You have to wonder what has changed in those nearly 3 years.
In terms of what the newcomer will have to deal with. The deal is not acceptable to the Tory party. Labour see no interest in helping it through. Not enough individual Labour MPs see any interest in helping it through. So the choices are basically no deal, a referendum or a general election. Nothing else has changed. The European Union won't renegotiate the deal. It's going to be...
Except that the no deal...
What's changed is that the British political system has zero credibility now.
Yes.
It's destroyed the British political system. I mean, right now we're looking at a situation where we're not going to a general election, which would make all the sense in the world. The Prime Minister has resigned. People are unhappy. There's no resolution of this horrible problem that's gone on for 3 years. Obviously, you go to a general election, but no, not in Britain. 150,000 Tories are going to pick a new leader. Probably Bojo the Bozo, as they say, Boris Johnson, who is going to try and push through a no-deal Brexit or pretend that he's going to push through a no-deal Brexit. All of it is lousy. It stinks of crony politics, not democratic politics.
Except that the no deal will probably go down a little bit more easier for voters who would know that, there is no real recipe for have your cake and eat a big part of it.
No, but the system is so dysfunctional that the Brexit party is predicted to do very well in the European elections of all things.
Yes.
Because basically the lousy Labour Party and the lousy Tory Party didn't manage to get their act together to contest those elections. The Remain Party was too wildly divided, and the demagogue, Nigel Farage, comes in and steamrollers everybody else.
Yes, that's absolutely the case. Nevertheless, I think it is possible, even likely, that there will be a general election. But what will that achieve? It's very difficult to read any results that come out of that general election. The Labour Party, as we all know, is completely divided.
Boris Johnson saying this Friday, we will leave the EU on October 31st, deal or no deal. And effectively, if there is no general election and there is no closure in Parliament, that's what will happen.
Yes, and Great Britain itself seems more divided than ever, even as a European, even when we get rid of them soon, we have a Great Britain where Scotland and Ireland are farther away from England than before. There's a very harsh left-wing Labour opposed to a very strong right-wing with Farage right now, and you just don't see the old Great Britain anymore, where Theresa May stood for, with her faith, with her the way she was talking, all that. There was still something of it, and it's gone while she's leaving us.
What strikes me every time I go to Britain is the large number of people, not MPs. MPs are firmly against the idea of leaving without a deal. But people, ordinary people, it seems to me the number has grown of ordinary people who, out of a feeling, I think there's a kind of a humiliation factor. I think they feel the whole thing has been so awful, they just want to slam the door and go. A lot of people I talk to are in favour of no deal. Ordinary people that you ask. And that's not going to happen because Parliament won't let it happen. But that is another problem. You have Parliament who won't let it happen. The people, in many ways, are ready for it, in some ways.
At least
I wouldn't say a majority, but a surprising number of people.
Humiliated. They're winning everything. They should come back, but it's not happening.
it's what surveys show, actually, is 40% of the population extremely energized for one camp, 40% of the population extremely energized for the other, and the rest kind of in the middle. But that hasn't moved at all in nearly 3 years.
That hasn't, but maybe the fatigue factor will finally start setting in now, in the sense that there'll always be one segment of people, who, like you said, they don't find it a problem if it's a no-deal scenario. But that's also because they are happy enough to just have a Nigel Farage with just a slogan and no real agenda behind it.
Absolutely.
And they don't really know the consequences. So there'll always be those and there will always be those who will stick to the fact that they want to stay. So this is like it's a no-brainer actually, in the sense that apart from another general election, nothing really would make sense unless people just accept the no deal.
But Boris Johnson is really frightening. I mean, he is the kind of politician you could never count on what he would be saying the next day, you know, and it is to have English politics, you know, so unaccountable for. If he becomes prime minister, don't you feel scared, Christopher?
No.
No.
No. Do I feel scared of Boris Johnson?
Yeah.
No, I feel scared for Britain.
Yeah.
But unlike Angela, I'm not British.
Yeah.
So I really don't care. They can sink themselves.
Yeah, well, the Irish care. The Prime Minister this Friday, when he voted in those European elections, stating that we're now entering what could be a dangerous phase for Brexit. At this point in time, what does the European Union do? Stand clear, or does it have to step in because of Ireland?
We've talked about this before. What the European Union has said, and is going to continue to say, is we would like a rational deal. But if you're not willing to make a rational deal, if you want no deal, take your no deal.
But that punishes Ireland.
Goodbye and good luck.
That punishes Ireland, no deal.
And I think, well, it will punish Ireland, and Ireland isn't going to want that. And there's going to be efforts to try and reconcile that problem. And probably Boris Johnson, if he's prime minister, will try and use Ireland as a kind of a hostage to trade off for other benefits. But it's going to be extremely ugly. And I don't think that the European Union at this point has any reason to want to accommodate Boris Johnson or people like him or this tiny minority Conservative Party that won't hold general elections and that now represents maybe 7% of the voting public of Great Britain. Why accommodate them?
Except if the new Prime Minister comes in with a no-deal kind of momentum, what will Europe do then? That I think might be the good
Sayonara, as they don't say in Europe.
I think Germany has a different position there, Christopher. They are trying all they can to avoid the no deal. And they are even ready, they were ready to give them another year, the German government, for their messy parliamentary sessions. And I don't know how far Germany will go in, in accommodating Boris Johnson, for example.
It's not definite that it is Boris Johnson.
Well, let's just say, for example.
Yes, but if it is Boris Johnson, I think that it's true. He's not going to get much sympathy in Europe. But if it's
don't underestimate the sympathy he's going to get in Germany. I tell you.
I think certainly if it's someone else, that there would be more of a chance of a further extension if they can't.
Look at it. I mean, Britain has jerked the European Union around for years. We even see it now. We even see it now with the reporting. Yeah. You've just reported on the over the last few hours on the exit polls in the Netherlands for the European election. That's illegal in Britain. We're not doing that because we publish in Britain, and so we're not allowed to do that because that's exit polls all over Europe. Britain has declared that you can't publish any exit polls from anywhere in Europe.
That's not a problem. But
I mean, it's not a problem.
Whatever
they voted
your
in the
antagonism towards Britain, that it pays a lot of money into the European Union, and I know it's been the most incredibly awkward European. No one would dispute that, but I think many people, on balance, would say that it had a certain usefulness within the European Union. It, in terms of anti-corruption, those who wanted the European Union pulled in a more business-friendly direction.
Oh dear,
there are a number
writing
of
obituaries
areas,
already.
Well, there are a number of areas where some people would welcome Britain's continued participation.
Sure,
I'm saying that
Britain was keeping Europe on the straight and narrow. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying
Britain was keeping Europe on the straight and narrow?
Britain is a big, awkward European, as is France, as is Germany. Probably a bit more awkward than both of them. Big countries are awkward within Europe. That's the way it is. I'm just counterbalancing your over-negative.
But as I remember, France, Germany, they're all part of the euro, not Great Britain. They're also all part of Schengen, not Great Britain.
All right, from the UK, let's graduate to the heart of the continent and Austria's only far-right cabinet minister who has managed to save her job this week. Yes, that is Vladimir Putin dancing with Foreign Minister Karen Kneißl at her wedding last August. As for the rest of her Freedom Party cohorts, they're out, including the party leader after a German press sting operation with a video where Heinz-Christian brags to what he thinks is a Kremlin insider about how he can benefit from financial backing from Moscow. This story has brought down Austria's far right. It could bring down the government next week. First of all, Georg Blume, is this going to impact in any way voters' minds?
I think it's very difficult to say. I mean, no, everybody knew that the right-wing parties have good relations with Russia and that Putin is giving support to Marine Le Pen here in France, or, you know, is on good terms with the ADF party in Germany, has good relation with Salvini, and that the Italians are looking forward for more Russian influence in Europe. So, you know, as cruel and disgusting this scandal is to all of us here around the table, it's not sure it's going to, you know, really distract those who are convinced for the...
How much influence does Russia have then in Europe? Right?
Well, I don't... it was just reported that Russian influence in this campaign is very negligible, and that they're not doing much. But on the long term, with these populist movements rising everywhere, we don't know how big this influence will become. And it shows clearly that the FPÖ, this party in Austria, is you know, is ready to do everything for their you know, it reminded, though, you know, that they don't just want to become to power by elections. They want to do it, you know, whenever way, get the money wherever they can, you know, manipulate the press wherever they can. And it gave you a feeling for the first time in a way that, because they were already in power, or, you know, that they had managed to get... So it's not the connection
with Russia, it's the greed that...
Yeah, and they had managed to get there, you know, a little bit like in the 20s or 30s, right-wing parties could have gotten also to power through, you know, shady deals. We have known that before, and we haven't seen it recently in Europe.
I don't think shady deals are unique to the right wing. And they're not unique to the Russians either. There are a lot of shady deals that the CIA has been involved with over the years. But it has to be said that that video is so damning in so many ways.
And yet 18%
I mean, also talks about outing, bringing out of the closet one of his partner. I mean, it's
yeah, damning as it might be, I don't think it makes a huge difference to the right-wing supporters.
But this is the problem. This is the problem we're looking at all over the world.
Because exactly what you said, that, you know, everybody does shady deals. What that does is that when somebody has now done a shady deal, it doesn't make a difference to the voter. And this really is the case.
Well,
I mean,
so this brings us to the question, what does make a difference to voters?
Well, to the right-wing voters, seriously, I feel nothing at all. You know, these are not the things.
Nothing at all says Nupur Tiwari. We'll see what the rest of the panel, what they think. When we come back, you're watching The World This Week. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's The World This Week. The World This Week in partnership with the Daily Beast. Christopher Dickey, foreign editor, is with us, as is Nupur Tiwari, founder of the feminist newsfeed service Smashboard. We're also in the company of Angela Diffley, reporter at sister station Radio France International, and Georg Blume, Paris correspondent for Die Zeit, author of The Undesirable Friend, about Macron's relationship with Merkel, or more broadly, France's relationship with Germany.
Well, how Germany stopped loving France in the last years.
In the last year? Oh, dear.
Years.
Okay. All right. We were talking before the break about how the Austrian far right was undone by that video, report, that sting operation by German journalists. The FPÖ was even forced to skip a party in Milan last week. Yeah, 11 other European far-right parties represented at a show of force hosted by Italy's Matteo Salvini, who in a snub to the Pope concluded with a rosary. There you see him. It looks like he's giving a thumbs up to God. And coming in for a selfie, look, there she is, Christopher Dickey. Frances Marine Le Pen.
Looks like Marine Le Pen. Yeah.
So that show of force last Saturday, what do you make of it?
Well, it's a campaign rally. They're trying to show that they've got momentum across Europe. Steve Bannon, former Trump advisor, was here in Paris in an $8,000 a night suite, telling people how they're all fighting for the poor. And it's the same kind of circus that we've seen from the right wing for a long time. I think I'm really interested to see what the results of the European elections are, because I think the polls have been telling us, oh, there's going to be this wave of the right wing. It's going to do so well. It may do well in France. It'll certainly do well in Italy. But I'm not sure it's going to do so well elsewhere. I mean, the right wing, the far right wing, totally folded in the elections in the Netherlands on Thursday. And in regional elections in Spain, we were all talking about how Vox was going to do so well, the far right party. It was a fizzle. So I'm not sure the far right wing is going to do all that well. And I heard here on France 24 not long ago that in fact they may come up with only 10 or 15% of the vote overall in Europe. If that's true, then I think we've made a mistake by overstating and overplaying the wave of the far right in Europe.
Because we forget that these are not national elections. You were electing a European Parliament, Georg Blume.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what matters is who sits in those big blocks that will then approve or not the next European Commission.
And, you know, if we remember 5 years ago, Marine Le Pen was pretty alone on her campaign trail. Now she is not, with these pictures you just saw from Salvini, and she has Salvini in his future group in Parliament. That will be a strong group with more than 100 deputies probably. So, I mean, it's growing. I mean, even if you're saying we can make too much out of it, you know, all our debate is about migration in Europe. They have certainly already, you know.
Not that they're going to outnumber the centre right and centre left, obviously. Yeah. But even if they increase their numbers a little bit, I think that little difference could already sort of be disturbing. Except that, you know, I mean, we saw those pictures there with Marine Le Pen. You know, this tight embrace, but I don't know how much the right-wing parties actually agree, you know, across all the nation states. You know, how much will they really be united as a force?
Well, we're discussing about them here 2 days before the elections. We're not discussing about Social Democrats, Macron or Merkel, what they have to say about you.
But I think
that shows everything. You know?
European elections have become a kind of theatre for the far right.
Well, exactly.
Well, I think European Union polls have shown that immigration is top of people's priorities. That is a fact.
Actually,
and yes,
the environment. I think.
The
environment is not anymore in the.
It's immigration, which is top. Whether we like it or not. And you were talking about
I don't think
what makes people vote. I think it's guts sometimes, and when people become stressed enough about something, they are pushed to the polls.
Let's look at the latest.
Not only that, not only are the far right parties talking about, or groups talking about immigration, even one of the recent videos that was done by the official European Union communication department, which was viewed, I don't know, 131 million times, I don't know what. It had, it had climate change as one of the concerns of the people. It had climate change, it had protect our borders, and it had fight terrorism. These were the three things that the European Union is using to draw more voters because, you know, low voter turnout is one of the consistent and persistent problem that the European Parliament elections have had. So this is something which is across the board. Even the European Union itself is telling people, come and vote because these are your major issues. So,
and climate is one of them.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that, as you say, the different anti-immigration parties do not agree with each other, even on immigration, on whether to share out refugees or whether to not have them at all. In all of those areas, there's considerable confusion. So they might not be very coherent as a bloc within the European Parliament. But nevertheless, if they do well, that is a strong message being sent. And the European Parliament, the European Union, is bound to have to react.
I mean, we had the Brexit 2 years ago, and there was a wave of support after the Brexit in European countries for the European Union. Now we are in surveys, you could see in Germany 70-80% supporting the European Union because the Brexit proved to be so terrible and you know, really not popular within the European Union. And now we are still, you know, we haven't taken the chance to really have a new building project for Europe. It's not visible in these elections, and that's why this has all turned sour. And you know, the other people are dictating the topic.
But many people one very important thing also about numbers, because you know we were talking about Austria and you know how the party is wiped out, etc. But I mean, how many MEPs does Austria send? I think
and they may not be
less than 20
all,
maybe. Right. And then you have France, where Marine Le Pen is likely to do very well. And then you have the UK, where Nigel Farage is probably just going to make a good score. And these are the countries that are sending a large number of MEPs, even if maybe the British MEPs, God knows for how long.
Let's look at the latest polls here in France. They predict a turnout that's marginally higher than 5 years ago. That was according to one survey by Ipsos, with Le Pen's party slated to edge that of Emmanuel Macron. These are the 6 parties that could have representation, 5 of them. There's a 6th, which is the Socialists and their coalition partners. You need 5% to get representation in the European Parliament. And as you can see, it's a mixed bag again with the Marine Le Pen's party polling slightly ahead of Emmanuel Macron's. What does that tell you?
Well, I think here in France as well, I think that the mainstream right are likely to do perhaps even better than the 13%. There has been a bit of a revival, and their voters turn out, which is not the case.
So where's the left gone?
The Green.
Yes, the Greens will do well, I think, across Europe, won't they? They will do. They've picked up a lot of votes from the left and a lot of votes because everyone is worried about climate change.
Well, there's certainly no incumbent fatigue in India. 303 seats for Narendra Modi's Hindu nationalist BJP in general elections, where the once mighty Congress party could only muster 52. Modi's margin, the biggest for an incumbent since Indira Gandhi in 1971.
My dear countrymen, you have voted for India. You have fulfilled your duty with plenty of might and spirit. In 2014, you didn't know me at all, but you put your trust in me. In 2019, having got to know me a little better, you've given all of us strength.
What was the secret of Modi's success this time around, Nupur Yatwar?
That a lot of people voted for him. But on a more serious note, I think, no, the BJP has been very, very full of energy. They have a lot of money. Don't forget that they are the richest political party in India. They have also miraculously actually not really made any talk about the economy central. The last time around in 2014, when they came into power, they just went on and on talking about black money and corruption and so on and so forth. This time, not really. Everything was actually really focused around Prime Minister Modi. So, you know, the supreme leader who can do and say whatever he wants to. So he's talking about things like national security, making that central. All the real problems of the people were not really, you know, that's not what the BJP was talking about. So really for me, it's a very anxiety-inducing period in India. And there are a number of people who are very worried about what's going to happen now to Muslims, to Dalit people. And there are tons of parallels have been made about how, you know, the BJP functions like the Nazi party, having its base in the RSS that assassinated Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, in the sense, the base of the BJP and its ideology really comes from the RSS. And the first time around, you know, the things that they were not talking about, now it's really open. In fact, I noted this, you know, we just saw Prime Minister Modi give his victory speech there after this sweeping, huge mandate. Don't forget that not only did they get a majority, they have a huge increase in the vote share. You know, it was a 6% swing, which is huge. So it's like from about 31%, BJP's vote share went up to 40. I mean, that's massive, you know. And in his victory speech, he said this. He said, those who speak of secularism have now stopped. Not even one political party in these elections came wearing the mask of secularism. So this is actually a very potent kind of, statement, because there he is quite openly and blatantly saying that secularism doesn't matter to us. So we are looking at a Hindu majoritarian rule, which is going to be far more aggressive and far more visible, actually, in its real nature. So this mask that he talks about is probably what BJP might have worn.
Right.
And this time round, there will be no mask. So it's a very tense period for India.
Gail Blumet, will it be a different India from the one that you covered as a correspondent?
I think it will be a different India for all of us, because the Congress party was, always a mixture of Western Indian, Hindu-influenced government party. Now we have Modi. I think he is like the first really indigenous leader of India, the real post-colonial leader India has now chosen. I feel like, we have to look at Jacob Zuma, for example, who has turned his country corrupt in a very, dramatic way in the last 15 years. We have to look at Mao, who was the first indigenous leader in China in a different period. But what a change that meant for the world. And this man is also a change for us, for the world. For Indian politics,
what kind of change?
Indian politics were nice to us. The Congress party shared all our basic values, like you said, for minorities, for this nationalist Hindu party is different. But I just read that in communal riots, 99 people were killed during the reign of Modi in the last 5 years, mostly Muslims. That seems a high figure, and and there are, when you are a Muslim, you're risking to be forced to eat
they were mob lynchings
I don't know, meat, or they.
All right, let's talk about that, because let me just bring him to this point, because India's Home Ministry estimates a 28% increase in communal violence in the first 3 years of Modi's term. But if we call up the graph, the trend over the long term is inconclusive. In fact, you'll see that there were more people killed in communal violence in 2008 than today. So can we really draw conclusions like that in a nation of 1.2 billion?
And if we have to look at the changes which occurred in South Africa or in China with these new indigenous leaders, maybe what Modi is representing is little change, in fact, and that he is not a brutal, murderous leader, corrupt in the sense like that happened to other developing countries.
Well, there were mob lynchings.
So I'm really unsure how to evaluate his position right now.
You should ask the minorities, the people who are living in India, who have been through experiences. These are the people who you should ask if Modi is a...
But that's a massive victory. Has he done nothing good, in your view?
There is a Hindu majority in India, don't forget. And also don't forget that...
But in areas where there isn't a Hindu majority, and he got some votes there as well, too.
No, he got votes everywhere. That's not what we are saying. But what I am trying to tell you is that, firstly, I don't agree that he is the first indigenous... probably because you're making a reference to Sonia Gandhi, who's Italian, and
no.
And his but what I think you are trying to get at, and I would put it this way, is that this new generation of voters actually don't have that kind of attachment that they had to the Congress party. The Congress party that was involved in the independence movement, etc. But anyway, coming back quickly to Modi's reign, as it were, people have not really assessed him on his performance. They haven't. He's a personality. There is a myth that's created around Modi, and this is very real. So, for example, even things like cooking gas cylinders that are given away in villages, it's like Prime Minister Modi has sent this for you.
Yeah.
And so this kind of building of this a supreme leader is what you won't see posters of other people anywhere. You know, they've been mob lynching. The economy is not doing well. There has been all kinds of things, but that's not what people are. And
Christopher Dickey, personification of politics, the fact that the economy isn't the top issue. What does that tell you?
Well, one thing it tells us is that he sent a few jets to bomb Pakistan a couple of months ago, and his popularity surged as a result. It's jingoism is always an effective political tool.
Absolutely.
Fear,
and on top of that, the Election Commission did not stop him. There were lots of hate speeches that were made. So, you know, the Indian institutions have been compromised in a major way.
Sure. Fear is always a potent political...
In the case, though, of those bombings, it was following an attack by...
It was following an attack by an Indian-born Kashmiri, supposedly, presumably, I would presume, with Pakistani terrorist backing, Pakistani government backing. It was a very brief skirmish, in fact, and Pakistan shot down one of the Indian planes and then turned the pilot back over. But all of that fit into the idea that Modi is the watchman, that he's the security guard, that he's going to take care of you. It fit into this cult of personality that you're talking about. And I think that what we see, actually, that's fascinating and frightening around the world is the rise of these demagogues, whether in democratic or non-democratic countries, who are building cults of personality.
No, but
whether it's, just a minute, Georg, whether you're talking about Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, Narendra Modi, Matteo Salvini, all of them are working in that direction. And they're doing it very successfully. I think one part of it is a factor of modern communications. Not just social media, but part of it is a factor of
India is IT cell, which is...
India is one of the most poorest countries in many terms still of the world. If you look at the election map, it's poor India which is voting for Modi. It's the northern part. It's largely Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, where really famine still had been a problem in the last year.
But you have to see, it's very interesting.
And this poor vote for a man like him, where lots of people...
Georg, has he been solving their problem?
I'll tell you what he's been doing. So he did monetization,
we have to,
which took
and
out
they are
56%
much behind in the
Indian
world development in some ways. We have to recognize that all my Indian friends are like you. You know, if I say one good word about Modi, they would always oppose it on absolute correct grounds, like you are doing it too. The minorities are not well treated. The system of the democratic system is put into question.
For example,
but we cannot be surprised. We cannot be surprised. It happened everywhere else, and India.
What's your point, Georg? What's your point?
Yeah,
we ought to just give... Because he got all the, he was elected, he got a big support.
No, and there is the catastrophe.
BJP is supposed to be a very mercantile party.
People vote
Look at China. The catastrophe of Mao is not happening in India. They are in a different, but they are on very different, in a very different stage of development than all the countries you're citing in Italy. It's just a wave of nationalism.
A brief final word on this.
Very quickly, I want to just tell, and because he's mentioning the poor, demonetization happened in India. It hit in 2016 the poor really badly. But what did Modi make out of it? You have to make sacrifices for the country. So there is this kind of gaslighting of the population that's happening. It's just as simple as that.
He gets away with that, presumably, as well, because of his very ascetic, very humble lifestyle
himself. The image that he's trying to, although the cave that he went to meditate in when he was not meant to be doing any polling campaign, but just remained quiet in the cave. But that cave actually had a lot of facilities. So, I mean, all of this is just...
all right, one final word before we go, because this has been a big topic of discussion this week. We're talking about India's developmental challenges here. They include the environment. And the environment, there have been demonstrations this Friday in India. There have been demonstrations all over the world. Again, it's those Fridays for the Future campaigns. These are images from here in Paris. High school students who, in this particular case, are making their voices heard ahead of those EU elections we were talking about. Now, on that score, one of the capital's most famous monuments will soon be a walk in the park. City Hall has designated U.S. landscape artist Catherine Gustafson to design a pedestrian mall around the Eiffel Tower. She's famed for London Hyde Park's memorial fountains for Princess Diana. And there's been kind of a bitter argument, Angela, between those who drive their cars in Paris and those who don't.
The same old.
Yes, the mayor of Paris is very big on public transport, pedestrianisation, green spaces, and a lot of motorists hate her. She's closed off areas on the banks of the River Seine. And there is a bit of a car, not car fight around Paris, particularly people who live outside Paris, who drive their cars into Paris and feel that they are entitled to visit Paris as well, that it doesn't belong simply to the Parisians. I think the park looks beautiful. And, you know, if it happens, that would be a wonderful thing. On the wider climate change thing, it does look as if the green parties around Europe are going to do well. And there is an urgent problem with the climate. But I think if they have serious power within the European Parliament, they need to be very careful not to continue to clobber small businesses with endless norms. That is what gave rise to the Gilets jaunes movement initially, a feeling that
there was a little guy being hurt by the policies. In the case of this pedestrian mall, Christopher Dickey, are you relishing the prospect?
I think it looks very nice. I don't have a car in Paris. I can move
and
around.
Also, you won't have to pay
well.
a penny. It will cost Paris millions, 72 million or something like that, and you won't have to pay anything.
Well, actually, I pay taxes here, but I think it's very pretty. It's very nice. I can't stand Anne Hidalgo's administration of the city. I think the city is a filthy mess now that it never was before.
It'll all be clean by 2024.
But I don't really understand why we're talking about the environment if we can't keep the city clean. But you know, but that's very pretty, I think.
As a Parisian, I'm very happy to have this massive park.
All right.
I lived in Paris when I was 20 years old. I didn't even dare to take out my race bicycle, which I had at that time because the traffic was too heavy. And now I have a very slow bicycle with two kids, one in front, one, and I feel like
all right, so
a
there's
king riding down Boulevard Voltaire.
That'll be the final word. That'll be the final word. Georg Blume, I want to thank you. I want to thank Newport Tuari, Christopher Dickey, Angela Diffley, and thank you for joining us here in The World This Week.